In the last chapter, we saw how Satyavati revealed her secret to protect the dynasty. Today, we will know how that secret will now save the Kuru dynasty. Bhishma, son, I have now revealed my secret. The renowned sage Vyasa, as known across the globe, is my son. There is no one who can perform this task better than Vyasa. He will certainly assist his brothers if you ask him to do so. For that reason, O courageous one, I'll call my son to defend the dynasty if you agree. Bhishma folded his hands in response to Satyavati's statement, adding, Mother, is there anyone superior to the sage Vyasa? You have made a very wise recommendation that will be advantageous to the Kuru dynasty in addition to being auspicious. Satyavati then summoned sage Vyasa with Bhishma's approval. When Satyavati thought of him, he showed up there. After so many years, Satyavati was moved to meet her son and gave him a tender embrace. Then Maharshi exclaimed, O mother, for this son of yours, what are you ordering? Your wish is my command. O son, should I begin issuing orders as soon as you arrive? Tell me about yourself first, son. Did you encounter any difficulties on the way? No, mother. I didn't encounter any special difficulties. The joy of meeting you nearly made up for my fatigue. All right. Then pay attention, my learned son. As you are aware, parents have equal rights over their children. You are also aware the older brothers have a responsibility to look out for their younger brothers and finish the tasks they left behind. As Bhishma is the brother of Chitrangada and Vichitravirya, since they share the same father, you too are Chitrangada and Vichitravirya's brother, having the same mother. This is my belief. Rest as you feel right. Maharshi Vyas remarked, Mother, you are aware of Dharma. I shall thus obey your commands while bearing Dharma in mind, meaning that I will not submit to lust when a son is born. My brother Vichitravirya's wives will have to undertake a purifying fast for a year, since I too want them to have godlike sons. This is so the queens won't be alarmed by my skin and foul odor. When Satyavati heard this, she said, Son, we don't have much time, so tell me something that can be finished quickly. You should impregnate these two girls as quickly as possible, since Hastinapur doesn't currently have a monarch and this situation cannot last for long. Without a ruler, the people would become orphans. Mother, as I mentioned, this is so that the queens won't be afraid of me. If they can have intercourse with me without any hesitation, they will produce a godlike son today itself. I am going now. And if the queens agree, tell them to wait for union on the bed after they take a bath and are dressed and decked up with jewels. After saying this, the sage left. Satyavati then made an effort to persuade Ambika by saying, Daughter, the future of Hastinapur rests on your shoulders today. Only you and Ambalika can prevent the downfall of Bharat dynasty. Listen, one of your brother-in-law will visit you at midnight and give you a son, so you should wait for him. Ambika prepared herself in anticipation of the arrival of Bhishma or another Kaurava as her brother-in-law, after hearing this from her mother-in-law. However, Ambika noticed that a Brahmin had arrived in the place of a monarch or a prince. As it happens, Dharma states that a man who is going to have niyoga must smear his body with ghee to ruin his appearance, and that a man and a woman should only have sex for children and not for pleasure. Ambika was horrified by Maharshi Vyasa's dark complexion, hideous beard, dreadlocks, and body odor too, when she saw him. He also had ghee spread all over his body. Oh my God! What have I witnessed? And to avoid seeing the sage's frightening face during intercourse, Ambika, terrified, closed her eyes. And then destiny played its part. Mother Satyavati greeted Vyasa as he emerged from the castle following the sexual encounter, saying, O son, Will a gifted boy be born to my daughter Ambika? Mother, she will have a son who will be bold, intelligent, and as strong as 10,000 elephants. He will also have a daughter and 100 sons. But what, Vyasa? Why do you use phrases like but here? But mother, Ambika had closed her eyes in fear on seeing my form. That is why her son will be blind. No! Satyavati sobbed. Satyavati appeared to be struck by a flash of anguish. She wept and replied, perhaps this was God's wish. But the king of the kingdom cannot be blind. You try with Ambalika, Vyasa. I will make her understand. This time, Ambalika went to the Rishi's room, but she had already learned about Sage Vyasa from her sister, so she was ready for that. However, when Maharshi showed up, Ambalika became frightened upon seeing a black Rishi with thick hair, ghee all over his body, and an unpleasant odor. As Vyasa proved to be more repulsive than she had initially imagined. Even though she didn't cover her eyes, the sight of that scenario made her skin go pale with fear. Pandu became the color of her body. When Maharshi returned to Satyavati after the sexual encounter, Satyavati realized from looking at Maharshi's face that her attempt had been in vain this time as well. When a tear fell from her right eye, Vyasa remarked, what could I do, mother? Time is uncontrollable, which is why I recommended a 1 year fast. Ambalika's face went pale when she saw me, but she didn't close her eyes. Her son will have the name Pandu, the one with pale skin, and poor health at birth since her body had turned Pandu. Try again, son. I'm sending Ambika again. Satyavati whispered to Vyasa, placing a hand on her chest in sorrow. In order to save herself, Ambika sent her chief maid, who was as gorgeous as an apsara covered in jewels, to the sage, because she would shudder at the very idea of visiting Vyasa after that night. When the maid saw the sage, she was not at all frightened. Rather, she approached him, bowed, and pressed his feet. Her bravery greatly impressed Sage Vyasa, who addressed the maid saying, O pure one, you won't be a maid anymore. In your womb, Dharma himself will reside. Yes, in this way, I, Dharma, am born as Ambika's chief maid servant's son. Following this, Ambika gave birth to Dhritarashtra, a blind child. Ambalika gave birth to Pandu, a boy with pale skin, and Vidur, a healthy son, was born to the maid servant. In addition to being fully knowledgeable about Dharma, Vidur was also myself. However, there is a backstory on why I was born in a human womb. In fact, I was cursed by a sage, which forced me to take birth in this mortal realm as well. So that story is something like this. Mandavya was an extremely successful and intelligent ascetic who lived a long time ago. He was an honest ascetic, exceedingly patient, and knowledgeable about Dharma. He used to raise his hand in penance beneath the shadow of a tree at his hermitage's entrance. He vowed to remain silent for life. One day, some bandits brought stolen stuff to his ashram. They had stolen money from the royal treasury, which is why the king's men were after them. They stored the looted items in the sage's ashram itself after spotting the soldiers. O great sage, the royal troops said to the sage Mandavya, have you recently spotted any looters here? However, Mandavya did not respond to their query since he was silent. When the soldiers became suspicious of him, they requested that the royal officials examine his ashram, where they discovered all of the stolen items. They then reasoned that maybe the sage had joined those bandits as well. For this reason, they found him guilty and brought the four robbers and the sage to the king. The monarch commanded that all five be put to death by impalement. The four robbers and Mandavya Rishi were subsequently executed. Many days later, the robbers perished from starvation and excruciating agony, but the sage Mandavya survived. Then Mandavya summoned numerous sages. In the middle of the night, all of the sages appeared as birds to Mandavya, asked him what sin of his had brought him to this state. In response, the sage Mandavya remarked, "O sages, whom should I blame? Maybe some of my crimes have caused this." When the palace's guards discovered that Mandavya was still alive after many days, they told the king the truth. The king was shocked and thought that maybe he was a divine person and had nothing to do with the robbery. Realizing his error, he and his ministers went to meet the sage and begged him, saying, "O sage, I made a huge error out of ignorance, and I unintentionally gave you such a harsh punishment. Please pardon me, O Lord." Now, since the sage knew that the king's intentions were pure, he forgave the king. He was subsequently removed from the stake, but the stake's tip remained lodged in his body and could not be removed. He then severed a portion of the stake, which caused the tip to stay lodged in the sage's body indefinitely. In this state, he underwent intense penance and entered heaven. Ani signifies the tip of the stake, and because the sage's body still contained the tip of the spike, the world began to refer him as Ani Mandavya. Mandavya visited my palace in Yamaloka once. He then arrived at my court and questioned me, saying, "O Yamraj, the guardian of Dharma, what terrible sin did I unknowingly commit that caused me to endure such suffering on earth?" I, Dharmaraja, then addressed Mandavya on this, saying, "O revered sage, you might not recall, but you had inserted a needle into a tiny moth's tail a long time ago. That action has led to this. A minor sin has devastating consequences, much like a modest donation has many times the effect." Ani Mandavya responded, "All right, Dharmaraja, then when did I commit this crime, please?" "In childhood," I replied. The sage Ani Mandavya became enraged at this and exclaimed, "O Dharmaraja, anything a child does up until the age of 12 cannot be considered a dharma, because at that age he is ignorant of dharma and has no concept of right or wrong. You punished me severely for a little infraction. The most horrible sin in the world is killing a Brahmin. Don't you know that? Thus, O Dharma, I curse you to be born in a Shudra's womb and to experience human sorrows in the mortal world. From today, I establish the law of karma in this world. There will be no sin on the deeds done till the age of 14. After that, a person will definitely get the outcomes of their deeds." This curse forced me to be born as a human, since I had also committed a mistake in administrating justice. I was born as Vidur, a slave's son. Vidur was well versed in both economics and scriptures. He had no vices like rage or greed. He had long-sightedness and was the well-wishers of the Kauravas. Now, we should stop and think that Ambika and Ambalika gave birth to two such sons who changed the history of not only the Bharat dynasty but the entire nation. So my question is, who is responsible for the fierce war of Mahabharata? Sage Vyasa, Queen Satyavati, Bhishma, Ambika or Ambalika? Since Maharshi Vyas was merely carrying out his mother's instruction and the form he assumed was a part of Niyoga's process, he is not at fault in any of this. Regarding Satyavati, she was also right in her place. Since Vichitravirya had died some time ago, the subject would have questioned the queen's purity, and how a king's child could have been born a year later. Meanwhile, if an enemy had attacked Hastinapur in the interim, the subjects would have fled in terror. Satyavati's hands were tied. How could she have accepted Rishi Vyasa's 1 year fast? Ambika and Ambalika are not at all at fault in this situation because Satyavati failed to properly introduce their brother in law to them, aside from Bhishma, and failed to disclose how he looked. On the contrary, they were subjected to some injustice in order to have a son, as they were forced to have intercourse in terror. Although Bhishma is somewhat at fault in this situation, while he is bound by his pledge, he might have broken it in order to preserve the lineage. Doing so would not have been a sin. Additionally, Ambika and Ambalika wouldn't have to endure such a terrible ordeal. However, in my opinion, nobody is especially at fault because nobody was aware of what time had concealed in its lap. Like, share and subscribe if you like our videos. Please also comment on the video and express your thoughts and questions.